The way it works is basically this. I have a network of schools. Each is run by an individual who's been trained personally by me. And these guys either bring me in, most of them come see me and bring me in a couple times a year. Those that can afford to come over to the States will actually come over and stay at my ranch. And in between riding horses and sitting in the hot tub, we actually get some training in, unfortunately. But anyway, each of my individual students that runs a school has a close range combat academy which teaches according to a very strict syllabus that I've laid down. We're called barn members. I call them barn members, which is a funny thing, but it's because I have a ranch and my home base is my barn. Downstairs is where the horses live and upstairs is where we train. It's a pretty good sized room and well equipped and everything, but it is a barn. It's an 1800s barn that's been restored. So I call the guys barn members. And each of the barn members has a certain book which is kind of written in a sort of code by me, and it entails all of the techniques, principles, and workings of the system, drills, etc. So the barn members that have schools, not all barn members have schools, but those that do, actually teach according to my syllabus, teach only my style of Wing Chun. Now, they may teach other styles. Other schools may teach karate. Some of my schools teach, you know, any number of arts that you could think of, boxing, kickboxing, jeet kune do. But they can only teach my particular brand of Wing Chun. And that's not because I have any ill feelings towards any other style of Wing Chun. It's only because it can itself cause confusion to students or cause misunderstandings when there's more than one Wing Chun being taught. So my experience says that it's wise to just stick with one type. And so each close range combat academy will teach according to the syllabus that I've laid down, which includes a belt ranking system. And a lot of people don't agree, especially in the Chinese martial arts, with a belt ranking system. And I actually do like the belt ranking system because I feel that until you've taken a test, you don't know what you don't know. You only know what you know. So if you haven't been tested, you're not sure you know everything there is to know or that you need to know. And so I'm not really of the opinion, even though I'm a Jeet Kune Do guy too, that belts are only for holding your trousers up. I think that belts actually do mean something. And the argument can also be said, well, you might have been a black belt 20 years ago, but now you're still wearing a black and you're not a black anymore. That could be true. But I think it's representative of a level that you once attained. Very much like a doctorate. Well, a guy who got his doctorate in medicine 20 years ago is still a damn good doctor. You know, most of them anyway. We do have a belt ranking system in CRCA, which is based on the forms, Sulim Tao Chum Kyu Buji, the wooden dummy, the knife, and the pole. And we have a ranking system which is based on your knowledge of those forms in depth in their applications, their Chinese terminology, the execution of the form, you know, all of the subtleties of the form. And each individual belt, besides those requirements, also carries other requirements. And each belt gets a little bit more detailed and difficult to pass. So a guy who has a belt in my system, I'm not saying he's better than somebody else from some other system. I don't compare myself to them. But I'm saying that he's proven that he has the in-depth knowledge required to pass that system down to the next person and not leave anything out. If you don't test, in other words, you just can't be sure which lesson you might have missed and which bit of knowledge you didn't get from your teacher. So each CRCA barn member or instructor carries a belt, and it's very plain for all the students to know what belt ranking he is. And there's no bones or falsehoods made about it. You're that belt. And as long as they're substantially ahead of their students, they can continue to teach. I also have a rule that you can make belts 2 down from your own. So if you're the, for example, red belt, you can make blue belts and so on. So down the line, as you progress in the system, you can also create more belts under you up to a certain point. And once you reach your 3rd degree black belt status, I allow you to then continue to create all the way up to and including 3rd degree black belt, which is the end of the line for us. Well, the first thing I'd want to clarify by saying it's different is by no means am I ever saying it's better or worse for that matter. but it is different. And, you know, no one single thing probably sets me aside from other Wing Chun guys, other than maybe my outlook on certain things. It's more of a whole picture. The Wing Chun that I practice is compliant to a certain set of rules that I've, over the years, 39 to be exact, have come to conclude are the cardinal rules of Wing Chun. And I look at them as almost a series of sieves or filters that every technique has to pass through. And I'm very strict about that. I have certain compliance that I have to meet. For example, every technique that I practice has to be compliant with the centerline theory, as I view it, which is different from many of the Wing Chun schools I've encountered. It has to be compliant with facing, the theory of facing, which again, I may be a little different than many, but not all. It has to be compliant with economy of motion, economy of time, yin and yang theory, the concepts of reference and timing. So there are certain requirements put upon each technique, and if a technique doesn't completely comply with all theories of Wing Chun that I adhere to, then that technique just can't be part of CRCA Wing Chun. So it's a very filtered down system, filtered through my own particular views of Wing Chun law. In theory, it shouldn't be different from anyone's Wing Chun. But as I said before, when anyone expresses Wing Chun, it's going to look a little bit differently. If you took all of my top students and put bags over their heads, which wouldn't be a bad idea, and you had them all practice, do the second form for me, I could tell you which one was which guy. Right away, I'd say, oh, that's Ken. All right, that one's Donnie. Okay, and I would know, oh, that's Jason Clark. That's my UK representative. You know, I'd know who they were right away, without question, because no matter, and they're all expressing very good Wing Chun. It's just they express it in their own way. If there was a trademark, I guess you could say, of my Wing Chun, it's something I'll demonstrate a little bit later that I've been referring to as cutting the fat out of my Wing Chun. Like, I view a lot of what I see in the Wing Chun world, and I'm not saying other stylists, I'm saying even within my own school, my own students, and even myself, I'll look at a technique and I'll look at it and say, how could I lean that technique down? How could I trim some of the fat out of that technique? How could I accomplish that technique more quickly? How could I get it done in less syllables of time, or with more energy being allocated to the technique that I really want the power to fall into? And so you might say, by looking at my Wing Chun, hopefully a trained eye would see that as different from some other martial arts, maybe some other Wing Chun guys, because I'm so conscious of that. I get on these kicks as the years go by, and sometimes my last kick was techniques that made a person stumble into the technique. In other words, my kick was making sure that my opponent's back foot got pulled off the floor anytime I hit him. So whenever I did a technique on my opponent, I'd always make sure that his back leg was pulled off the floor. In other words, I'm yanking him into my motion, whatever that motion was. So I got on that kick for a while, and I refined all my techniques that way. My current kick is cutting out the fat. And you can cut out the fat in techniques in a number of different ways that I'll show you in a little bit.